For 40 years, doctors have told you the same thing after 60. Cut the carbs, cut the bread, cut the oats, cut the rice. And yet, a study published in Aging Cell just weeks ago found something that quietly contradicts almost everything you've been told. Adults over 65, 4 weeks, no new medications, no new exercise, and the biological age inside their cells, the one that actually predicts how long your independence lasts, moved backwards while they ate more carbs than they had in a decade. If you have ever cut every carb in sight and watched your knees ache anyway, your energy still crash at 3 in the afternoon, your sleep still gets shallower, you weren't crazy. The science just caught up to what your body had been telling you. I'm going to walk you through exactly what those participants ate, why it reversed a biological measurement most doctors have never even ordered, and what you can do tonight at your own kitchen table to start the same process. Without buying anything new. I'm Dr. Richard James. I've spent more than 3 decades sitting across from older adults who did everything they were told to do and still ended up frustrated. And what I'm about to share is the result that surprised me most this year. Your driver's license says one age, your cells say another. And the gap between those two numbers is the most important number nobody is measuring at your annual physical. Doctors call it biological age. It's measured through DNA methylation, the chemical pattern on the surface of your genes that predicts mortality more accurately than the calendar ever could. For some of you watching, the gap is small. For others, it's 7, 8, even 9 years ahead of your chronological age. And here's the part that should bother you. You didn't earn that gap. You inherited it from the dietary advice you trusted. Right now, while you're watching this, the cells inside your muscles, your liver, your brain, are quietly aging at a rate the calendar can't see. And for most adults over 65 who have been on low-carb diets for years, that rate is faster, not slower. There's a reason your body responds to carb restriction differently after 65 than it did at 45. A reason that has almost nothing to do with willpower or insulin. A reason that lives inside your cells, and one most doctors have never been trained to test for. Before I show you what those Sydney participants actually ate, I need you to understand one thing about your body after 65. Because once you understand it, you'll see why the meal plan they used was the only one that could have produced this result. There's a word for what happens to muscle after 65 when carbohydrate gets restricted for months on end. The word is sarcopenia, and it isn't just a fancy term for muscle loss. Your muscle isn't only shrinking. It's losing its ability to store the very fuel that protects it from breaking down further. It's losing glycogen capacity. Glycogen is the form of fuel your muscles keep on the shelf. When the shelf is full, your muscle is safe. When the shelf is empty, your body looks for fuel elsewhere. And after 65, the place it goes first is your muscle itself. So when a 70-year-old cuts carbs hard and stays low-carb for years, the body does something it doesn't do at 45. It starts treating muscle protein as raw material for energy. The scale might drop, the waistline might thin. But what's leaving isn't only fat. What's leaving is the strength that holds you upright at 80. Here's the second mechanism. Cortisol, your stress hormone. In a younger body, low-carb dieting raises cortisol modestly and then settles down inside a few weeks. In an aging body, that settle-down phase doesn't happen the same way. Cortisol stays elevated, sleep gets shallower, and shallow sleep at 70 is not the same as shallow sleep at 30. Shallow sleep at 70 prevents the overnight memory consolidation, the overnight glucose clearance, and the overnight cellular repair that your aging body needs every single night to stay independent. The third mechanism is the one that matters most for biological age, your mitochondria. Mitochondria are the engines inside every cell. They make the energy that keeps your heart pumping, your nerves firing, your immune system patrolling. And they have a fuel preference. At 25, a healthy mitochondrion can run cleanly on fat. At 70, a healthy mitochondrion still prefers glucose for clean, efficient energy production. When you starve an aging mitochondrion of glucose for months, it doesn't switch gracefully to fat. It runs hotter. It produces more reactive oxygen species. And those molecules are exactly what damages the DNA methylation patterns that the epigenetic clock measures. In plain language, A chronically carb-restricted mitochondrion in a 70-year-old cell ages the cell faster than the calendar. So if low-carb was supposed to be the answer, why did it leave so many of you tired, sore, and aging faster? Because the diet was designed for a younger metabolism. It was tested on younger participants. It was promoted by clinicians who often weren't 65 themselves. And it ignored the simplest fact in aging biology. An older cell is not a younger cell with a few more wrinkles. It is a different cell, with different fuel needs and different vulnerabilities. That ache in your knees on the second day of a low-carb diet wasn't detox. It was your mitochondria running out of the only fuel they could still handle efficiently at your age. That 3 p.m. crash that hits you every afternoon, the one no amount of coffee can fix? That's cortisol falling off a cliff while your muscle's glycogen shelf is empty. That shallow sleep your spouse keeps complaining about. That's an aging brain that needed a small evening pulse of carbohydrate to make serotonin and melatonin properly, and instead got told to skip dinner's rice and have only meat and salad. You weren't doing it wrong. You were doing what you were told. And what you were told was extrapolated from research that wasn't done on people like you. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because what those researchers in Sydney did wasn't just feed people carbs again. They fed them the right carbs at the right time. And the result was something I didn't think was possible in 4 weeks. A study published in Aging Cell in May 2026 followed adults over 65 through a 4-week dietary intervention. The protocol wasn't keto. It wasn't intermittent fasting. It wasn't any of the extreme prescriptions you've seen in the last decade. It was whole food carbohydrates eaten in a specific window. And the result was that participants' biological age, measured by epigenetic methylation, moved backwards. Let me say that again. Backwards. Not slower aging. Reversal. A measurable reversal on a clock that, until recently, the medical community didn't believe could move in that direction at all. So what did they actually eat? Let me walk you through a typical day on the protocol, and I want you to picture your own kitchen as I do it. Morning, within 60 minutes of waking. Half a cup to a cup of cooked oats. Real oats. The kind that takes 5 to 10 minutes on the stove, not the powdered packets. Topped with berries. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, whatever the season offers. Alongside that, around 25 grams of protein. A couple of eggs. A small bowl of Greek yogurt. A simple whey or pea protein shake if cooking isn't possible. Mid-morning, a 10 to 20 minute walk outside. Even on a cool morning, even in winter, your skin needs to see daylight. There's a biological reason I'll come back to in a moment. Lunch, before 1 p.m. A whole food carbohydrate. Sweet potato, beans, lentils, or brown rice. Combined with protein and a vegetable. A simple bowl. Real food. Optional afternoon snack, before 3 p.m. A piece of whole fruit, an apple, a pear, a small handful of grapes. Dinner, before sunset, no later than 7 p.m. Protein, vegetables, healthy fat, olive oil on the salad, fish or chicken on the plate, but no grain, no rice, no bread, no late dessert. And after dinner, the kitchen is closed. Water only, no grazing, no late-night nut bowl, no herbal tea with a cookie. That is it. That is the entire protocol. 4 simple meal anchors, 1 walk, 1 shutdown rule for the evening. Now look at what they did not eat. They did not eat ultra-processed grain products. No breakfast cereals with 14 ingredients. No protein bars. No grocery store muffins. They did not eat refined carbohydrate after 3 p.m. They did not snack into the evening. So the carbohydrate wasn't reintroduced everywhere. It was reintroduced where the aging body could use it. In the morning, during the daylight hours, around movement, and removed where the aging body couldn't. In the evening, when cortisol should be low, when insulin sensitivity drops, when the mitochondria are preparing for an overnight repair window. 4 weeks. No medications changed, no new exercise added. And the biological clock, the one that actually predicts how long your independence lasts, moved in the opposite direction it had been moving. The participants didn't just feel better, they tested younger. That's the part most viral diet stories will never tell you, because most viral diet stories don't end with a peer-reviewed measurement. I want to be honest about what we don't yet know. We don't yet know whether the reversal holds at 12 weeks or at 6 months. We don't yet know exactly which carbohydrate did the heaviest lifting, oats versus beans versus sweet potato. And we don't yet know how the protocol behaves in adults with type 2 diabetes on insulin. The 4-week signal is real. The 4-week signal is peer-reviewed. The longer-term picture is still being filled in, and any clinician who tells you otherwise is selling you something. But here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. Because the reason this worked, the actual cellular switch that the right carb at the right time flipped, is something I think you can use in your own kitchen starting tonight. Let me show you why. Your mitochondria are the engines inside every cell. When they run with the right fuel at the right time, they produce energy cleanly. When they don't, they produce damage. The first mechanism is glycogen. When your morning oats and afternoon sweet potato top off the glycogen shelves in your muscle and liver, your mitochondria stop having to scavenge. They run on the cleanest fuel they recognize. They produce ATP, the energy currency of every cell in your body, with far fewer reactive byproducts. Less damage per heartbeat, less damage per breath, less damage per thought. Here's the second mechanism. Morning light hits your skin. Your liver, your muscle, your brain start a clock the second that happens. Inside that clock, your cells transcribe specific repair genes, genes that fix mitochondria, genes that clear out damaged proteins, genes that rebuild muscle. And those genes don't just need light, they need a small pulse of glucose to fully activate. The morning oats, eaten while daylight is still in your eyes, is exactly that pulse. The third mechanism is the evening shutdown. When the kitchen closes at sunset, you give your body a 12-hour window without incoming glucose. In that window, an aging cell finally does something it can't do during a low-carb day that drags into nighttime grazing. It activates autophagy. Autophagy is your cell's recycling system. It tears apart damaged proteins, damaged mitochondria, damaged membranes, and rebuilds. Healthy autophagy is how your cells stay biologically young. Chronic ketosis can also trigger autophagy, but in an aging body, it does so at the cost of elevated cortisol and ongoing muscle catabolism. The Sydney protocol triggers it without that cost. Glucose during the active hours, empty stomach during the rest hours, repair during sleep. So the cellular switch is this. The right carb, at the right time, lets your mitochondria run clean, your morning light clock activate repair, and your evening fast trigger autophagy. The three of those, stacked over 14 to 28 days, is what moves the biological clock backwards. And here's the question I want you to sit with for a second. If your body responds better to the right carb at the right time, what time is the right time? The answer, based on this protocol and on a decade of related circadian nutrition research, is before mid-afternoon for the main meals, before sunset for the last bite of the day. That window is where the aging cell can use glucose without paying for it in damage. You don't need a supplement. You don't need a powder. You don't need a gym membership. You need oats before noon, a walk after, and the kitchen closed at sunset. That is the start of it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, and you're right to ask. I've been told low carb is the only safe answer for my blood sugar. Let me address that directly. The protocol I'm describing is not a free-for-all. It's a window. And the window matters more than the carb. Whole food carbohydrates, eaten with fiber and protein and morning timing, produce a different glycemic response than a slice of supermarket bread eaten at 9 p.m. The post-meal glucose spike in older adults is significantly blunted when carbohydrate arrives before 3 p.m., paired with protein, and followed by even a short walk. If you are on medication for blood sugar or blood pressure, do not change a single thing without your prescribing physician. What I'm giving you here is information for that conversation, not a substitute for it. Bring this protocol to your next appointment. Ask whether your specific regimen is compatible with adding morning oats and a lunchtime sweet potato. That's the right question. The second objection I hear is, my doctor told me low carb is the only way to lose weight after 60. Here's the reframe. Weight loss and biological age reversal are not the same outcome. The Sydney protocol wasn't a weight loss trial. It was a biological aging trial. The right question after 65 isn't, what's the fastest movement on the scale? The right question is, what extends your independence? The third objection is the rebound fear. I have been low-carb for 10 years. Won't reintroducing carbs cause weight gain? I understand that fear, but the rebound stories you've heard mostly describe people who reintroduced refined carbohydrates at night in unlimited quantities, without protein, without movement. That is not this protocol. Picture instead someone like Alice, a representative profile, the kind of patient I see often. Alice, 72, a retired schoolteacher, had been strict low-carb for 9 years. She added morning oats with berries and a lunchtime sweet potato. Nothing else changed. Within 2 weeks, her 3 p.m. crash was gone. By week 4, she was sleeping through the night for the first time since her 60s began. She did not gain weight. She gained energy. That is the pattern I want you to consider for yourself. Here it is, in full. The whole protocol. 6 lines. Print it. Tape it to your fridge. Morning. Within 60 minutes of waking, half a cup to a cup of cooked oats with berries, plus 20 to 30 grams of protein, eaten while daylight is in your eyes. Mid-morning, a 10 to 20 minute walk outside, in daylight if you can. Lunch, before 1 p.m., a whole food carbohydrate, sweet potato, beans, lentils, or brown rice, with protein and a vegetable. Optional afternoon snack, before 3 p.m., a piece of whole fruit if you're hungry. Dinner, before sunset, no later than 7 p.m., protein, vegetables, healthy fats, no grain, no refined carbohydrate, no dessert. Evening, kitchen closed, water only. Duration, 14 nights minimum. Reassess at 28 days. That is the protocol that moved the clock backwards for the participants in Sydney. That is the protocol I want you to give your body the chance to test for 2 weeks. Not because I am telling you to, because the research now says you have earned the chance to. I want you to pay attention to 3 things during those 14 nights. First, the 3 p.m. crash. Does it get smaller? Does it disappear? Second, your sleep. Are you waking up before sunrise less often? Are you falling asleep more easily? Third, your morning stiffness. The first 10 minutes after you get out of bed, do they hurt less by week 2? Those are the earliest signals the protocol is working. They land before any blood test would show a biological age shift. They land first because your nervous system feels the mitochondrial repair before your DNA methylation reflects it. If you are going to give your body these 14 nights, write starting tonight in the comments below. I read them, and I want to know who is in. You don't have to declare it loudly. You don't have to share it with your spouse or your kids. Just type the words. Make a small commitment to the cells that have carried you this far. And subscribe, because next week I'm covering the one mineral that those Sydney participants were already getting more of than they realized, without even knowing it. It is the same mineral that makes your morning oats work better. The same mineral most older adults are quietly running short on. I'll walk you through where to find it, how much, and when. Take care of the cells that have carried you this far. They have earned a good 2 weeks. I'm Dr. Richard James. I'll see you in the next one.